I am fading the Giants. I love the Saints. I mean, yes, the Giants won a game and did it with their QB of the future, Jackson Dart. But let's not buy Giants futures tickets just yet. Maybe not this year. Maybe not even next year. I mean, they only threw the ball last year in that game for 89 yards. They averaged well under 4 yards per play. What they did do was keep control of the clock and convert a lot of very timely third downs. And in fairness, that was the only way they were winning that game, with or without Neighbors, most likely. And the Saints didn't get crushed by the Bills as a lot of people expected, but they were able to run the ball in Buffalo pretty damn well. And they had to play a similar game to what the Giants had to do against the Chargers. Hold the ball, keep the Bills under a million, and they did that. And my guess is that both teams will employ that exact same strategy this week. They don't want to put their young quarterback in harm's way if they can't. So, for me, it boils down to who runs the ball better and who stops the ball run better. I mean, it's that way in lots of games, but I think it's magnified here. I mean, Scatterboo versus Kamara, for argument's sake, Kamara is, if nothing else, more versatile. My issue with the Giants, they've got the third worst rushing defense in terms of yards per game, and they're actually tied with Chicago. They're allowing a whopping 6.1 yards per carry. I mean, I'd
Wow.
love to build a case for the Giants. I really would, but I can't. I'd kind of love to see Dart do well. He's playing about 6 hours from Ole Miss, where he played his college ball. So he's probably going to need a bunch of tickets. Is that a distraction? Maybe, but I can't base a bet on an intangible. I really love the Saints here, guys.
Mac, thoughts on the Saints this week?
I have more thoughts on the Giants. If you look at that game, Dave nailed it. They barely did anything. In fact, EPA sounds kind of like a fancy stat, but it's really just like success. Like you know it when you see it. If it was a 40-yard touchdown, a 60-yard touchdown, he got into the end zone. If it was 3rd and 2, and they got a handful of yards, it doesn't really matter. So I think it cuts through the noise a lot. And if you look at just throughout turnovers, offensive and defensive EPA, the Giants had one of the luckiest wins in the last few years. They were outscored by 13 points on that metric. All else being equal, they should have lost the game by 13 points. They win by 3, so they're upgraded in the market, and then the market takes a point off for Neighbors, so it kind of balances out. But I think you probably think that was pretty consistent performance to the same team that went 0-3. They just happened to get a win just by luck and circumstance.
Be interesting to find out when a team that's winless is going into week 5 that is actually favored there and what those numbers look like against the spread there. So, but I'm with you. I like the Saints here as well, Uncle Dave. So you mentioned a lot of the key points. I'm not going to regurgitate everything, but um, for the Saints, I think something to keep an eye on is going to be their backfield, right? Because I feel like Kendre Miller is starting to get more of the carries there for the Saints, and he's been an absolute monster when he's gotten those opportunities. And there may be some rumblings of Alvin Kamara possibly getting traded at the trade deadline, and Kendre Miller taking over as the RB1 there for the New Orleans Saints. But this New York Giants team, despite how great their defensive line is on paper, you mentioned it, they're giving it up on the ground. And I think when you have this type of combination with Kendre Miller and Alvin Kamara, I think you're not going to ask Spencer Rattler to do a lot of throwing in this game. And I think for a guy like Spencer Rattler, who as he gets more and more starts and reps under his belt, he's just going to end up getting more comfortable. And Saints are kind of going through that carousel of a new offensive game plan, new head coaches, and things like that. So, Kellen Moore, we know that he is a good offensive mind. I'm not going to call him elite. I'm not going to call him brilliant. I think, at this point, he's good. But you mentioned it, in the Giants on the ground, I mean, they've given it up. We saw in week 1 against the Commanders, 6.65 yards per carry. Last week, the Chargers, Omarion Hampton, I know he broke one out, but he still had 128 yards rushing. So if you are a player prop better, maybe look at Alvin Kamara this week. Maybe look at Kendre Miller this week against the New York Giants. So Saints -1.5, I think, is a number right now, currently over at the Westgate Super Contest. Let me double check that here. Oh, it's up to -2, but I think they win this game by a field goal or more. But again, if you are betting on this, and if you're making it in the contest, pick to shop around, get the best number, as we always say.